video will give instruction on how to create a small slab plate with a carved design. This video is intended for my Ceramics 1 students at my high school. It's an introduction to slab rolling and draping over a mold, and then doing some carving and glazing to accent the carving. For my students, we are going to be rolling the plates first, but then I'm going to be giving you a sketch sheet where you're going to come up with some design ideas for what you would like to do for your plate, and eventually you'll be doing a large one. Now, you could print out something on a computer, like if you wanted to have a particular word or a font, you could print out something, you could bring it in. If you had a picture that you wanted to use as reference to trace, you could bring that in, and we would transfer it very similar to the way that you might do a pumpkin, with transferring it with maybe some little needle tool holes. Now, we are just working small because I want you guys to, again, understand how to roll out clay and how to drape it in a mold. So, the clay that we're using is our stoneware clay. If you happen to get a piece just like this straight off the block, you can use it as is. It doesn't need any wedging. If you have scrap clay, you will need to wedge it first. Now, we are going to be using my slab sticks, which are hardwood wooden sticks of different thicknesses. This is the first time we will be using these this semester. These are the 1/4-inch sticks, and I have them color coordinated, so you want to make sure that you have 2 red sticks, which will result in a slab that is a 1/4-inch thick. I have different color coordination for the different sizes, like 3/8 of an inch is for yellow. That's if you're going to be doing something a lot bigger, or maybe you're going to be doing some really deep carving. And I also have 1/2 inch, and I have smaller, like 1/8 of an inch. So you start off by taking your clay and putting your sticks on either side. And for the case of rolling out a slab from a brand new piece of clay, the nice advantage is you can just roll it straight as is. I'm going to show you in a minute how you can do it if you have scrap clay. But you want to rotate your clay, do a little roll, pick it up, release it from the canvas, and rotate it. The clay will constantly get embedded into the canvas surface of the table, so that's why you pick it up, release it, flip it, and you want to make sure that you are stretching it in both directions, or all directions. If you stretch it in only one direction, you'll end up with a slab which is much too narrow and way too long. Now, we are going to be using paper plates as molds, but the one thing that you need to know about placing clay over a drape mold is if it could get stuck to the drape mold, you have to put a barrier between the clay and the drape mold. And in this case, we are going to be putting a plastic bag over the drape mold. Make sure that it is nice and smooth on top. Like, you don't want to have, you know, a mass of it, like a tangled knot there. That would just be bad. And then just kind of leave the rest of it out to the side. Okay? Now, there are 2 different ways you can go about putting this on there. You could put it on and cut it, which I'll show you in a minute. But first, I am going to just use the method where I use a template, which is a little bit bigger than the plate, and I'm going to trace it out. So, I'm now going to smooth the surface of the clay with a red rib. And I will have these tools in the video description if anyone is interested in finding them. I have some Amazon links that I use with my associate links, and you can find those easily on Amazon. I do flip it, and I make sure that I smooth both the front and the back. Smoothing the clay is really only part of what the rib does. The more important aspect that the rib does is it actually compresses the surface. Clay is strongest when the clay particles are compressed. So by compressing and smoothing both sides of the clay, it is the strongest. Now, I'm going to set the template that I've pre-cut on here, and I will have some available in the classroom. And I'm going to take my needle tool. I prefer a needle tool rather than a knife when I'm working with this. And I'm just going to drag it around the edge of this template. By the way, this template just happens to be made of tar paper, which is roofing paper. In the United States, it goes underneath shingles. We use tar paper quite a bit for different things in here. The scrap clay, I'm going to keep loose like this, so don't bundle it up. Keep your scrap clay loose because we will squirt it down and we'll put it in a bag so it can absorb moisture. Now I have cut the slab out, and I can carefully center it on here. Again, this is a little bit larger than the actual plate, and I'm not pressing with my fingers, but instead I'm going to use a rib. Now you could use a big rib or you could use a little rib. You could use whichever one you like, but I am going to just gently push this in so it goes down into the form of the plate. And again, I'm doing this gently. I'm not trying to thin the clay. I think I will switch to the small rib here. Okay, and then for the rim of the plate, I'm going to make sure that it's not sagging down. I can pull it up a little bit like that, okay? And I do want to make sure that this looks even. When I look across it, I want the rim to look nice and even before I put it in the cabinet. Now, this is pretty much all I need to do on the first day. For my students, I would like for you to put a name tag on it. And usually we make the name tags out of paper towels. Okay, so you will set the name tag on it like that. We will put it into the class damp cabinet for 24 hours. We're going to put it in there without it being covered, but when you pick it up, you want to be careful and make sure that you're not warping the plate. You want to make sure that, again, when I look across, that the edge is looking even, and you will put it in your class cabinet just like that. Leave all the extra plastic out to the side. Make sure that the extra plastic is not going on top, because you really don't want that to have one edge of the rim that's really soft. So I will set that aside. For the second plate, I did want to show you the same sort of concept, just a slightly different way of putting it on. So once again, I am going to roll out the slab and keep rotating the clay. Remember to roll it in multiple directions. If you roll it in only one direction, you'll end up with a really long, skinny piece of clay, which will not fit your plate. You have to be mindful when you're working in clay to remember what you're doing. I'm still using the slab sticks. And you know that you're down to the thickness of the clay when you can hear the wood on either side of the clay. You know that you're down to the right thickness. So make sure that you keep going until you're down to the right thickness. I do a final lift, and then I'm going to rib. The rib not only smooths the surface of the clay, but the rib will compress the particles. And clay that has a compressed surface is always stronger. You want to have compression of your clay particles so you can have the strongest slab possible. When I'm teaching students to rib for the first time, I often tell them, think of the rib as if you were petting a kitten or a puppy's head. You are going to kind of go at an angle that's gentle. When you start off, like, you're not going to go in and do that. You would be hurting the kitten or the puppy, right? You're going to go at it with a gentle angle as the rib first begins to touch the surface. Okay, so I have previously shown you how to set a circle on top, but in this case I want to show you a different way. And this is the way that I always used to do it, but sometimes some kids have difficulty with this. But this is the way that I typically do it. Okay, once again, I put my plastic on the surface of the plate. I'm going to set the clay to the side, and then I'm going to gently take my rib and push it into the form of the plate. Okay, now to get the edge trimmed off evenly, I take my needle tool and I put my fingers underneath the rim of the paper plate, and I run the needle tool right up against the edge of the paper plate. Some students have difficulty with this, but I find this a little easier myself. Again, if you can put your fingers underneath there so you can feel where the needle tool is, that's awesome. There we go. As long as your needle tool is down low enough underneath the edge of the plate, you should be fine. Okay, so this one is good enough because it matches the edge of the plate there. It's a little bit smaller than the first one, but that's okay. Now, one last thing that I might do is come along in here and just even out this rim so the rim looks like it's pretty much an even thickness there. So it goes up and then it has like a flat spot for the rim. And again, for my students, I would have you put a name tag on it. When you go to set it in the class cabinet, make sure that you are setting it very, very flat. Make sure that the plastic does not wrap over the edge, and make sure that it is not warped. You don't want to like pick it up and warp it. If you tend to warp clay, it will have a bit of a memory. Now, the other thing that I wanted to show you real quickly is the reason that we keep these scraps loose and you do not combine them. If you keep them loose, you can take a squirt bottle and you just squirt down those loose scraps. We put them back into the bag, and the next person can use those and wedge them up. Or you yourself could wedge them up at this point and you could use it. The moisture that I lost into the table is now replenished in there, and this is ready for another plate. And that is day one on making the Ceramics 1 drape molded plates, either with a template beforehand or putting it on the mold and cutting it out. You could do whichever way you prefer.